This'll be a blast.
Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So they're back with a Ziggs complete guide, and I've wanted to do this one for a while, but believe it or not, it's really hard to get a Ziggs gameplay, especially in the bot lane slash duo lane, because Ziggs like ADCs, not like a lot of others, because Ziggs isn't an ADC, he is actually a PC or a mid laner. He's viable in both roles, but he also needs like 2 items at least to even start doing damage like a lot of other ADCs. So therefore, a lot of the times, like, my team just gets destroyed before we even reach that stage, and therefore I can't really get a good gameplay. Now in this video, I'm not in this gameplay I'm not really like hard carrying my team, but you will see why exactly it is that I chose this gameplay, because it does demonstrate Ziggs' strength. So anyways, we're gonna jump into the practice mode to go through what exactly Ziggs does. Alright, so first up we're gonna go over his leveling order, and then after that we will be going through his skills and abilities. First up, we are going to disable the enemy bot. So first up, at level 1 you want to take Q for the poke. Then at level 2, you generally will take E for the zone control and the damage. Level 3, you'll take your W. You'll max Q first, take out whenever available, of course. And after you max Q, you want to max E. And finally, you want to max your second ability, which is your W. Alright. So we're going to head over to our favorite spot in the river, and I'm going to show you guys what his passive does and what his abilities do. So first up, his passive. As you guys can see, there is a bar below his mana bar, and what that is basically his passive. So when it is red color like this, his passive is up, and whereas when it so here is his passive. Basically, it enhances his next auto attack to do extra damage to enemies like that. Boom. So his normal attack does like 52 damage, but that attack with his passive is gonna do an extra 87 damage, so it more than doubles your basic attack damage, basically. So, what else does it do? It does a lot of damage to towers. So I'm going to demonstrate that real quick. So as you guys can see, when I have my passive up, I'm going to be doing 174 damage to a tower, whereas if I don't, I only do 54 damage to a tower. So that is what makes Ziggs a very strong tower taker. So now I'm gonna explain what his basic abilities do. So this is his Q. As you can see, the range is actually very long. If you guys can see the triple arrow on the ability, it's gonna bounce further than what it shows here. So here, as you guys can see, it's gonna launch it. It bounces 1, 2, 3, and that's its maximum range. So Ziggs is one of the best poking champions. He is an artillery mage because he has a very long range. So something like that. We're gonna start from here. Boom, boom, boom. Didn't really reach the target dummy there, but you guys can see how long his range is. Bounce, 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 like that. And yeah, so something to take note of is that if it hits a wall, it's not going to bounce. So here, I can actually bounce it over the wall if I do this. Like, put it over the wall. But if I do something like this and put it here, it's going to collide right into the wall and explode. That's something to take note of. Now his W. It has basically 3 uses. The first use is it pushes enemies away from the center, so something like this. If you put it like that, it's gonna blast that guy away from you. I'm gonna put myself to 0 cooldown. If you put it over here, it's gonna bounce him to you. And if you use it on yourself, as you can see the indicator, you will be able to propel yourself either forward or backward. Now, of course, you can do something like this where you put it here, you blast him away from you, and you blast yourself away from him. So the last use of it is actually to destroy towers. So I'm going to show you guys what exactly I mean. So when you get a tower to a certain threshold, I believe it's like 30% health at max rank. Not sure about at low ranks, but at max rank is 30% health. So here, I'm just going to take this tower down low. Now, using your abilities fills up your passive faster, so you need to use 2 abilities to fill up your passive. So no passive, one ability fills it about 3/4 ways, and another one does fill it up all the way full. So here, yeah, so here it's in execute range. There's the indicator above the tower, so when you put your bomb onto the tower and bomb it, it's instantly going to execute the tower. So that is what his second ability does. Now his third ability, as you guys can see, a huge range you can put it at the location you're going to put it on. It's going to have like 7 bombs. So 7 bombs over there, and if enemies walk over, they will detonate the bombs. Now of course what you can also do is you put it directly on the enemy. That generally will detonate about 3 bombs depending on how good your placement is. Something like that. It will generally detonate 3 bombs. And lastly, his ultimate, very, very huge range, especially at max rank, semi-global kind of ultimate. So just for a comparison, if you're at mid lane, it can reach the Baron Pit and the Dragon Pit is the max range. So really, really huge range. In the middle of the ultimate, it does do additional damage. So something like that, boom, it did 316 damage. But at the edge, it does less damage. So like that, 211 damage. So the damage difference, roughly an extra like 30% damage or so. Really good for clearing minions as well. Yeah, so that's pretty much what Ziggs does. So now we can get out of the practice tool and jump into his build and runes as well as his spells. So his build is going to be the same for both the dual lane as well as in the mid lane. So this is not actually his build. I'm going to show you guys what his build actually is. I have not actually managed to redo Ziggs' build yet. So this is the build that I go on Ziggs at the moment. So first up, I like to start off with the Archangel Staff. Now the Archangel Staff did just get nerfed, but I still think it's essential for Ziggs because Ziggs did get nerfed on his Q and he uses up a lot of mana. So I do actually like to go for the Archangel's Staff on Ziggs just for the mana. And now of course this is going to delay your power spike because you got to evolve it to get the extra stats, and also it delays you getting the Luden's Echo. So I will say that Archangel Staff is an optional item. Some people like to go for it like me, some people don't like to go for it. So for me, Archangel Staff is my first item, mainly for the mana, and for most people, not for most people, for some people, Luden's Echo is going to be your first item. So for me, after Archangels, I go for Luden's. Then generally, I will go for Stasis. Generally, you go for the Ionian Stasis, the Ionian Boots, of course, for the CDR / ability haste, and the Zhonya's, of course, for the safety. Now, of course, you can go for other enchants like Proto Belt or QSS as well if you need it, but generally, Stasis is going to be the best one for Ziggs. Then you go for your Death Cap, which of course gives you a huge injection of AP as well as increasing your AP by 40%. So basically, when you hit this 3 item power spike is when Ziggs is going to really start to hurt, because by this point in time you'll be pretty late game, like you'll be around level 12 or 13, and you have 3 items inclusive of Death Cap, and you'll be doing a ton of damage. So now afterwards, you generally will go for the Void Staff to give you the penetration, because most people would have some form of MR by this point. And lastly, you go for the Morellonomicon for the Grievous Wounds, of course. So now, there are, of course, variations to the Ziggs build. Now, first up is, of course, removing Archangel Staff, which will give you an extra item slot. And lastly is Morellonomicon, which might not always be needed if the enemy team doesn't have a lot of healing. So I'm going to go through the other items you can build. So aside from the items we already have, you can actually build Liandry's Torment, which I don't fully recommend, but for some people they do like it because Liandry's Torment still is a very strong damage item despite the fact that the Madness passive did get nerfed. But yeah, it still can do a lot of damage. Personally, I don't like going for that. What you can actually go for is Lich Bane as well. Now this synergizes a lot with the Ziggs passive, which of course does cause you to take towers a lot faster with the Lich Bane, because it does enhance your Nyx auto attack after you use an ability, which is pretty often on Ziggs because you're spamming Q. And if enemies are close enough to you, which normally they shouldn't be, you can also auto attack them for extra Lich Bane damage. And lastly, you have, not lastly, but lastly for your damage options, you have the Infinity Orb, which of course does give you flat magic penetration as well as crits against low health enemy champions. Now for your 2 defensive options, you have Crystalline Reflector, which is against heavy AD teams, and Banshee's Veil against either heavy AP teams or heavy AP teams with some CC that you want to immune, for example Blitzcrank or Thresh Hook, or if there's simply you want to immune a Thresh, pretty much. So you do have a lot of variation in your itemization, especially if you don't take the Archangel Staff. Your build probably gonna look something like this. So you have like these 3 core items, then you have 2 item slots. So sometimes maybe you go for Realnomicon, and then maybe you go for a Lich Bane, or you know, if you need more defensive options, you can go for something like this. So but as you guys know, my preferred build is like this, with of course the Archangel Staff. This is my preferred build. Alright, so now we can go into a discussion of the runes. Now the best rune, keystone rune for Ziggs is Airy. No two ways about it. Pretty much Ziggs is a poke style champion. There's no arcane combat in Wild Rift, so Airy is your best bet to increase your poke damage. Now for the second rune, for the domination rune, you actually have 3 huge options. Now first up, you have Champion. Now Ziggs generally doesn't die too much, so Champion is going to increase your damage a lot in both the early and late game, provided that you don't die. But it is very risky because Ziggs is by no means an early game champion, and if you rack up 2 deaths before you reach your 2 item or 3 item power spike, Champion's not going to do anything for you, so it's very high risk, high reward. Your other 2 options are Gathering Storm for guaranteed scaling, which I do go for sometimes, and your other option is Brutal, just so you have more damage in the early game. So generally I go for Gathering Storm as my safest option. It helps me scale well into the late game, but I also go for Champion if I feel like it's a game where there's not too much ways enemies can assassinate me, aka not a lot of backline divers or assassins, which is quite rare in the current meta. But for the second one, the Resolve rune, I normally take Bone Plating. Now there really is no better rune for Ziggs, because the Hunter Titan isn't going to be so useful for Ziggs, because generally you won't really be caught out in the first place, and if you do, you're generally dead anyway. So Bone Plating is a lot more useful for when you do get caught out, because you can't reduce the damage of the next 3 auto attacks. So pretty much Bone Plating is your best option. And lastly, for your last option, you generally go for Sweet Tooth all the time, be it in the duo or the mid lane. And you can also go for Mana Flow Ban, which does help in your early game for mana, and does of course help with the Archangel's Staff as well. However, I do think that the sustain in terms of mana and health from the Sweet Tooth is just simply better, so I always go for that. And lastly, for your spells, you always go for Flash, of course, but your second option, you can opt between a lot of options. Actually, you can go for Heal if you're in the dual lane, you can go for a Barrier for both mid lane and the dual lane, and Exhaust is also an option for both, and Ignite is also an option for both. But generally, I think Barrier is going to be your best bet even after the nerf, just because Ziggs, if you get caught out, also Barrier is going to absorb a lot of damage for you and try to help you get out of there alive. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Ziggs items, runes, and spells. Now we can move on to the gameplay. Alrighty, so here we are with the gameplay. So now first up, I say this very often, especially when I talk about Ziggs in my tier list or like my best bans videos, but the main reason Ziggs is very good is a very non-exhaustive list of having one of the best pokes in the game, great late game scaling, very strong AP, being able to poke throughout laning phase and throughout the game while generally staying safe. His second ability helps you to both disengage as well as take towers quickly. His passive allows you to take towers very quickly and push towers very fast. And his ult allows you to do giant AoE damage as well as also steal barons, dragons, and other objectives in the later stages of the game from like 3 screens away. So basically those are the main like couple of reasons why Ziggs is good. Pretty much a ton of reasons. Now he did get nerfed recently in terms of his mana cost on his Q, but generally Ziggs is still in very good shape, and I think he's a lot more balanced after that nerf. Now the main problem you see with Ziggs in the laning phase is with his mana. So now when you play Ziggs in the laning phase in either the dual lane, as you see I play here, or in the mid lane, you generally want to just play very safe, because at the early game you don't really have a lot of damage, and your only real strength you have is the fact that you can poke from range. So what you want to do is stand back, throw your Qs as often as possible. If you have an opportunity, walk up, use your E on the enemies and auto attack them if possible, but if you can't do it safely, then just don't do it. because you don't want to put yourself in any unnecessary danger. So if you guys can see here, we managed to chunk out the Thresh quite a bit while me and Nami remain at full health. Now that's because I've been throwing my Q towards the Thresh all the time. Here you can see why Ziggs runs out of mana very easily. So I run out of mana after just throwing a couple of Qs and Ws. So I gotta go back, take the fruit for the mana, and continue about my business. Now Thresh already in very bad shape. I bombed the Ezreal towards me with my W and put the E behind him so he has to walk through it to escape. He takes the lantern but actually eats 3 bombs within my E during that time. So now I'm gonna briefly discuss why Ziggs is so good in the APC role. Now this is for 2 main reasons. Firstly, you only pick it when your team has no AP damage. As you guys can see in this game, we have a Jace, Irelia, and an Akshan, all of which are AD. So I need to get an AP champion. So it's between Ziggs, Orianna, or Corki, mainly as your top 3 options. So Ziggs, very strong option within those 3. And the second main reason why you want to pick Ziggs is for his amazing wave clear. Now the main reason why Ziggs ADC is so good is because generally after taking, generally the first fight happens at the dragon, and after the dragon fight both teams reset and go for the herald. And when I say both teams reset and go for the herald, generally the support roams to the herald, and the 2 ADCs stay in their lane to farm the minions and just pretty much have a 1v1 sometimes. Here I kind of get played by the Thresh, so that's what you not want. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to get close enough for that to happen. So as I was alluding to earlier, Ziggs has super duper high wave clear. So generally when you are left alone in your lane 1v1 against the enemy ADC, generally you don't win 1v1 because firstly it's still early in the game, and secondly the other ADC generally just has to auto attack you and you have to aim your skills. Now in this case it's not, in this match it's not the case because I'm against an Ezreal who also has to aim his skills. So not necessarily true for this match, but in general most ADCs don't really have to aim, they just need to spam their auto attack button. So generally you don't win. So what you generally want to do, stay under the tower, use your Q, your autos, and your E to just clear the minions. Now you can also do this with your ultimate if you really need to. So here is a prime example of how to not play not play Ziggs and get caught like what I just did there, but also shows you a very good example of how you use your W to escape. So there I managed to use the W to bomb myself towards my tower and bomb the Ezreal away from me so that he cannot do any further damage to me. So here the first dragon has spawned, and obviously this means that there is going to be a huge team fight at this area. Ezreal ultimate goes pretty wide, but he does manage to pick up a kill on Akshan. In the meantime, Irelia in the backline picks up a double inclusive of the enemy jungler. Here Darius finds himself in no man's land and has to flash away. Now we're left with a 4v3 against the enemy team. Infernal Dragon is of course up, Blast Plant is up, but it can't really get into a safe position. Irelia decides to engage onto the Darius instead of focusing on the Dragon, and does get a killing spree off onto the Darius. Now the issue here is that death timers are still pretty low, and the enemy team members that died have respawned and managed to come back to the dragon fight. So what has happened here is the fight has been so prolonged that the enemy team has all respawned, gone back to the dragon fight with their items of course, and therefore they do manage to get the Infernal Dragon. Fizz is on the chase and I'm running out of mana, so I'm gonna have to back off. Fizz does go for the Navi instead of me though, so that's fine. Here I have a huge wave, so I'm just gonna clear the wave and then I'm gonna recall. So pretty long of a dragon fight, which does eventually lead to us kind of losing the fight. Now the good news about this fight is 2 things. Firstly, Irelia managed to get very fed without actually dying, and secondly I managed to get some assists I believe without dying, and I managed to get a kill and 3 assists without dying as well. So me and Irelia are building up our snowball. So here Nami roams to the Rift Herald as I did mention, so it's going to be a 4v4 at the Rift Herald because I'm going to stay in the dual lane and the Ezreal does the same. Now there is a variation to this scenario where Ezreal decides to go follow his team to contest the Rift Herald. Now in this case as a Ziggs, it's very simple. You pretty much just get a free first tower because Ziggs is the fastest tower pusher in the game. Maybe only like Tryndamere, Jax, and Fiora can sort of compete with him situationally depending on how fed they are. But pretty much at this early stage of the game, Ziggs generally is the fastest tower pusher in the game. Here I'm gonna have to bomb myself away from the Ezreal again because he tries to engage onto me. So here, pretty much if Ezreal roams, I get a free first tower even if the tower is at full health. So yeah, so here as you guys can see, I'm sticking to the game plan. I'm just using my spells to clear the minions. At the same time, I'm getting off poke on the Ezreal just because I can. It's an Ezreal versus a Ziggs. Now, if this was someone like a Kai'Sa or a Lucian, I'd be playing a lot more safe under the tower just because they can burst me down and kill me. But with Ezreal, it's a little bit harder because both me and Ezreal has to aim poke. So basically, it becomes who aims the poke better and who can, you know, get off their poke on the enemy. So Nami actually manages to pick up the first tower with the herald we just got. Ezreal aggressively ease towards me again. I don't actually have a ward to put into the bush, but I do manage to DPS the Ezreal a lot and also aim my ult to where he is gonna go. So he does eat the center of the ult, but he does survive because of his barrier. Here Diana comes in. I have to flash the Diana Q because if Diana hits Q, she manages to jump to me for E and ults me, I'm dead. So here a very early flash from me to save my life. If I didn't flash that Q and the Q connected, I would have been dead. So overall, it is a pretty good flash. So here I finally pick up my Archangel's Staff, and at this point in time, I'm still not doing too much damage yet. I only really start doing damage when I pick up my Ludens, and my damage spikes through the roof after I get my Death Cap. So here, we're just gonna head back to the lane and clear the lane. Ezreal has decided to go to the mid lane, so this is sort of my chance to push, but obviously before we do that, we gotta ward the Tribush to see if anybody is coming. Unfortunately for me, the minion wave is just slightly outside of the tower because the enemy minion wave has arrived to stop my minion wave from crashing, so a little bit unlucky there. I can see the Thresh coming up already, but Thresh isn't too big of a threat on its own. Here I'm using my spells to charge up my passive to get an enhanced auto onto the tower, and Diana shows up as well, so here I'm gonna have to back off. Unfortunately, Thresh hits the death sentence and the flay, and everybody hits me, including the Ezreal ulti and the Diana ulti as well, so I just die instantly. So here you can see what happens if Ziggs gets caught out. It's pretty much you just get eviscerated instantly because Ziggs doesn't have a lot of health or defenses, so yeah. In the meantime, while there are 3 men pushing the top lane, we are 3 men pushing the mid lane, so overall it's kind of a cross-map trade of the towers. We get the mid lane tower, they get the top lane tower, and the dragon is spawning. So my team is in position, setting up for the dragon spawn. Enemy team is trying to back, but I realize it's kind of stopping them from backing. In this case, I do think it's sort of better to just let them back because then we can get a free dragon. But I rather decides against that. So here, either way, we're gonna go onto the dragon with the enemy bot lane pinned under the tower. Here, the other 3 members of the enemy team show up from the bottom side of the jungle, and now becomes a full-on 5v5 team fight. So here I get off a huge ult which hits multiple members off screen. Of course, the ult range is pretty huge and really hard to see when I throw my ult. I managed to pick up a kill onto the Darius, and we're chasing for the Diana. Krugs blocked my bomb, unfortunately, so your bomb gets blocked by minions and jungle monsters. Can be a bit irritating sometimes because it sort of just blocks you from hitting the enemies that you want to, but it sort of does happen. So here, I'm auto-attacking the dragon to proc my passive, then I'm using my spells to get my passive up again, and then I can auto-attack the dragon again. So here we do secure the Cloud Drake, and from here, nothing too much comes of it. I'm just gonna stay in the mid lane, not in the mid lane, in the top lane to just pick up the farm. Now obviously here I could be pushing the top lane tower, but with no vision of the enemy team, it's a little bit unsafe to do that. So here I just get the cannon and I'm gonna back. Now here you can see Fizz and Ezreal is in the mid lane, so maybe I could have actually pushed that tower, but Rift Herald is gonna spawn, so what is likely to happen is a fight at the Rift Herald. So now here I have 2 options. I can either walk top and try to push the tower while the Rift Herald fight is occurring, or I can rotate to the Rift Herald to help my team with it. So here I see Ezreal in the top lane trying to clear a wave. So I'm making the decision to rotate to the Rift Herald fight so that I can actually help my team and have a numbers advantage. So here Fizz runs straight into me at low health. I get an easy kill onto the Fizz. And yeah, so here as you can see, overall we won the team fight. We got 3 kills compared to their 1 on Irelia, and we can pick up the Rift Herald. So that was overall the better decision because Ezreal was not with his team and he was at top, so therefore we can pick up an easy Rift Herald. So Ezreal is still at top, and there is somewhere in the top side jungle, so I'm actually pinging my team to push here because we do have a Herald and we do have a Ziggs, so we can get this tower relatively easily. So here I actually misjudged how much damage the Rift Herald is going to do to the second tier tower. And I actually put my W too early, so I don't actually manage to get the execute because I put it just a second too early, so a little bit of an embarrassing mistake there, but you guys get the idea. Generally, Rift Herald auto and W will seal the deal, but in this case it sort of didn't. So yeah. But the general idea was there, where you do use your Rift Herald to get the hit and then you use your Ziggs W to execute. So here we have our Luden's Echo and an Amp Tome. So here we are going to actually be doing damage. Now if you guys can see how much gold I have compared to my teammates, it's not a whole lot because I generally been playing weak side. And not actually, we didn't actually get a single gank from the J. So Ziggs is also very good at playing weak side just because of how he can just wave clear and not get dived or just ganked too much as long as you're playing safe. So that's another huge strength of playing Ziggs ADC. So not the most gold, but you will see that we will be contributing quite a bit to our team in terms of just damage and utility in general. So Ziggs always a good pick in my opinion. So here we're just gonna get mid lane priority. We have kind of pushed out the top lane. Akshan is gonna do a little bit more of the pushing over there. Baron is spawning in 20 seconds, so obviously whenever Baron spawns, you want to see if you can get an opportunity to do it. Most of the time you don't really have an opportunity to do the Baron without just winning a team fight or something like that, but sometimes you do have such an opportunity. Here, Fizz a little bit out of position, has to use his Playful Trickster to get out of dodge. And here we actually have a setup around the Baron. We see Fizz walking towards the top lane, and we do make the call to actually just go for the Baron. First up, getting the mid lane priority, of course, and then we just make the decision to go for the Dragon. Now Ziggs has walked his way back into the mid lane, but the enemy team is none the wiser about us doing the Baron. They don't realize that we're doing it. Thresh and Fizz somewhere in the mid lane. Diana we can see is in the bot lane, just picking up the wave, and here we get a free Baron just because the enemy team didn't even realize we're doing it. So here with our Baron and with a Ziggs, we can actually just push straight for inhibitor. Dragon is indeed spawning, but of course it's better to just get an inhibitor than to get a Dragon. So here we're pushing in. As you guys can see, 5-man strong push into the base. Ezreal ult does do decent damage to all of us, and here I use my Ziggs ult to zone them away, and we do easily get the mid lane inhibitor. Now at this point, there is no reason to push further because we can't end the game on this push. All 5 members of the enemy team are up. Actually, Ezreal is dead, but you guys get the point. We can't end on this push. So instead, we're all gonna just fall back onto the Dragon. So here is a important macro skill where you don't just blindly go for the Dragon when it's up. Instead, you can go for a push for an inhib and then fall back onto the Dragon. Here I managed to bomb myself into the Fizz ultimate, the edge of the Fizz ultimate. A little bit unfortunate, but doesn't really matter too much. So here my team are chasing for kills, but instead I'm doing the more intelligent thing, which is to push up the mid lane, because with Baron buff and with 2 members of the enemy team down, we can actually look to end the game. Ezreal, Diana, and Darius doesn't really have too strong wave clear. So with Baron and 5 members inclusive of a Ziggs, we can just force the end of the game, and the enemy team can't actually do anything about it. So this brings us to the end of our 5th complete guide video. You will see that despite not even reaching our death cap, we actually managed to do the most damage in the game and playing weak side as well. So really shows the power of Ziggs. So with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye